Howdy friends! Today is a good day. We're gonna talk about something I've been wanting to talk about for a long time. We're gonna talk about some good old teen dramas. More specifically, the ones that are really bad. Now, I've seen my fair share of teen dramas in my existence on this earth, and there are some that I have disliked quite a lot, but about which I didn't have enough to say to justify making full videos on. So I thought compiling them into a list would be fun. So yes, today we are talking about the worst teen dramas I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of them. It's pretty sad when you really think about it. I talked about some of them with you guys on my Instagram story when I asked you to tell me about your unpopular opinions, which, by the way, follow me on Instagram. We do fun stuff over there all the time. So this little exercise should be a lot of fun. Now, for the record, this list should be longer in theory, but I decided to exclude shows I've already made full videos about on my channel. So you won't see Riverdale or Gossip Girl 2021 or Pretty Little Liars Original Sin or Ravenswood. Even if they all deserve their place on this list, I've already talked about them at length. You're totally welcome to check these videos out if you haven't, but they're not on this list. I'm keeping it to shows I haven't talked about yet. I picked 8 of them, and I'm very excited to list them down, but before we get into it, I want to take a quick moment to thank today's sponsor, HelloFresh. You know, so far, 2023 has been incredibly busy for me, and as much as I would like to, I don't really have the time to figure out what to eat every day and then go grocery shopping and bring everything home to cook. We all know that routine gets pretty time consuming, pretty fast, not to mention pretty expensive nowadays. Thankfully though, HelloFresh is here to save the day. You can now cut back on expensive takeout and delivery by having a variety of amazing meals brought to your door for a much better price. With over 35 weekly recipes, HelloFresh has the options you're looking for to help you achieve your goals. You can choose calorie smart or carb smart recipes, or even customize select meals by swapping proteins or sides, upgrading your proteins, or adding protein to a veggie dish. And if you're busy like me, HelloFresh has you covered by providing fast and fresh recipes, their latest line of meals featuring robust flavors and filling portions that are ready in less than 15 minutes. You get taste and quality done quicker than you can imagine with recipes like falafel power bowls, seared steak and potatoes with béarnaise sauce, or Southwest pork and bean burritos. It's quick, easy, and delicious, and it feels like you're eating something right out of a restaurant. It's a total win-win. And you know what? You guys are in luck, because HelloFresh is hooking you up. Right now, you can use my link in the description, or go to HelloFresh.com and use code POGFSNFEB65 for 65% off your first meal plus free shipping. Yeah, because they're just cool like that. So make sure to check it out. All the info is in the description down below. Thank you so much to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to the show. Alright, with that out of the way, let's take a look at what I consider to be the worst teen dramas of all time. Starting with number 8. The Beautiful Life. Kicking off this list is a show that few people have heard about, but that, believe it or not, was executive produced by Ashton Kutcher. Nope. It's not a joke. The Beautiful Life was a CW show from 2009 starring Misha Barton, just 3 years after her exit from the OC, about the lives of a bunch of young models living in a co-residence in New York City and going through shenanigans. It's very much trying to replicate the codes of Gossip Girl and... Oh, why has nobody heard about this show, you ask? Well, thanks for asking, I have the answer. It's pretty simple, actually. The Beautiful Life is unique in the sense that it is a show with one of the fastest cancellations in the history of television. Because this show was canceled by the CW after only 2 episodes. 2 episodes! That's insane. This show existed for 2 weeks. To tell you how ridiculously fast that is, when the cancellation was announced, the cast and crew were in the middle of filming the 7th episode of the season. The 7th episode. They didn't even get to shoot a third of their first season before the network pulled the plug. They were like, nope, this sucks, this was a huge mistake, you need to kill it. And I would like to remind you that we're talking about the CW, a network that is notorious for refusing to cancel terrible shows, even when the ratings don't back them up. And this time around, yes, by the way, the ratings were embarrassing. And it's not difficult to see why. After the show was cancelled, again, 2 weeks after it started, Ashton Kutcher decided to have the 5 finished episodes of the show uploaded to YouTube. So, like right now, you can go on YouTube and watch for free the 5 finished episodes of The Beautiful Life. I tried to watch them, and even though I knew there were only 5 episodes, I still tapped out halfway through the 3rd one. The Beautiful Life is genuinely one of the worst TV shows I've ever seen. Genuinely. It's so bad. I completely understand why it died so fast. It's unbelievably bland. It looks ugly as hell. It's boring. And honestly, the only reason why I would recommend you go and watch one of the episodes is only so you can witness firsthand for yourself how awful the acting is in this show. It's probably Misha Barton's worst performance ever, but she's not an isolated case here. Everybody sucks.
Claudia! Son of a bitch. Where were you yesterday? The Posen show was a disaster.
Nice rags, Iowa. New haircut. Looking pretty fresh for a guy who's just about to catch a plane.
I'll pay you back every penny, I swear.
Don't worry about the money. Consider it severance. Egan, I'm dropping you. And you know the worst part about this? You were actually really good.
Claudia. Claudia.
No, Mom, do not come to New York. That's a terrible idea. Because I don't want my baby anywhere near this snake pit. I didn't steal anything.
Are you going to deny shagging Franco in the VIP room for the job?
Maybe I should just move home, get a job at the mall, raise my baby with my mom like every other girl from my high school.
Sonia, listen to me. You worked too hard to build this career. This will all just blow over.
Sonia! You bad girl! How did you get your hands on that dress?
Let's just say I have a relationship with security at your hotel. You're delusional.
And you're a sneaky tart. I'm not afraid to play dirty either, Sonia. You would not believe some of the things I've had to do to get myself here.
Oh, please, spare me the whole sad London East End street urchin story. So you've slept your way to the middle. Well, if I were you, I'd consider myself lucky to be working at all.
And now, if you would turn your attention to the bar, I want to introduce you to my muse of the evening, Marissa Delfina, wearing my signature piece. Do your thing, girl!
Okay, Samwise, whatever you need to tell yourself.
The Beautiful Life is just a disaster. Everything about it is a failure. And oh, you want to see something funny? Guess who shows up in episode 3?
How you been?
Busy, bored. Europe is endless.
Yup, it's Wonder Woman, good old Gal Gadot, in what I believe was her first ever English-speaking role on television, aside from a 2-minute appearance in an episode of Entourage where I think she had 1 line. Anyways, I can't believe this show is real. It is some of the worst television I've ever witnessed. I lost brain cells. I can't get them back. Let's move on. Number 7. Twisted. This one is interesting. Back in the early to mid 2010s, there was this very specific era of very short-lived teen dramas that were essentially just shameless copycats of Pretty Little Liars. Studios were trying really hard to capitalize on the craze because PLL had taken over the world incredibly fast and had an entire generation of teenagers and young adults in a chokehold. They all wanted a murder/conspiracy mystery show with hot teenage characters played by actors in their 30s to go on for several seasons by cultivating an obsessive audience. Basically just a television cash cow they could capitalize on. Even ABC Family, the network network behind Pretty Little Liars, now known as Freeform, desperately tried to replicate the success of Pretty Little Liars for years, and that is how, in 2013, we got Twisted. And I'm gonna be honest, this one is a bit of a bummer. If I had to make a list for bad shows that wasted great concepts, I think Twisted might make that list. The story is about a 16-year-old boy named Danny, played by Avan Jogia, who returns to his small hometown of Green Grove after spending 5 years in juvenile detention because he mysteriously murdered his aunt when he was only 11 years old. Obviously, entering a new high school under those circumstances, especially while surrounded by people he knew as a kid at the time the incident happened, Danny gets a good amount of shit. Everybody refers to him as Socio, which is short for sociopath, and the one girl he manages to rekindle his friendship with is always questioning whether she should trust him because he won't tell anyone why he killed his aunt and is clearly keeping a secret, but especially because soon after Danny returns to Green Grove, a student of the high school is murdered, and Danny becomes suspect number 1. Like, honestly, the premise is really solid, and the cast is pretty good too. You have Avan Jogia, Maddie Hassan, who later starred in the incredibly underrated show Impulse, a YouTube original that was unfortunately cancelled after 2 seasons because nobody watched YouTube originals. Jack Falahi, aka Connor from How to Get Away with Murder, is also here, and in what is probably the most unexpected casting choice of 2013, Avan Jogia's mom is played by Denise Richards? Okay. Sure. I watched the whole thing week to week while it was airing back in 2013, and I can say confidently that Twisted is a show that is entirely ruined by its writing. Almost immediately, the show drowns itself in an excessive amount of underwhelming melodrama, quickly loses focus of its own mystery, the plot becomes way too messy, it's all over the place. It becomes very clear very fast that the writers intended on indefinitely stretching the main mystery without ever truly solving it. A bunch of random characters were introduced to pivot away from the main storyline, a new psychopath emerged every 2 weeks, and instead of focusing on the great mystery they set up from the get-go, with the pretty decent characters they managed to craft, the writers instead made the very weak decision of relying way too much on an unfortunately very unconvincing love triangle to function. In the end, the show could have worked and could have been great. The cast was awesome, the concept was amazing, the characters were working, but sadly, due to the poor execution of the plot, Twisted flopped really hard and it was cancelled after only 1 season due to particularly disastrous ratings. Number 6. Famous in Love. Ah, there she is. I knew there couldn't be a list like this without mentioning a show by my good old friend Marlene King, the creator of every cancelled show ever, but mainly the woman behind Pretty Little Liars, the only show she's made that wasn't cancelled. Honestly, not much to say about this one. Famous in Love is a complete snooze fest that came out on Freeform in 2017 and that was cancelled and forgotten after only 2 seasons, the second of which I'm not sure was completely done. It starred Bella Thorne as a teenage actress named Paige Townsend who becomes famous overnight after being cast in a big movie adaptation of a very successful novel, and now she has to navigate her new reality in Hollywood and all the shenanigans that come with it, yada yada yada. Now this show is very much Marlene King doing Marlene King, but without the edge of setting up a mystery like in the PLL franchise, so as you can imagine, this whole show is a boring mess full of tired cliches, tired melodrama, and an over-reliance on romance that is mainly used for, you guessed it, a useless love triangle that never ends. Nothing about this show really stands out, the performances are not all that impressive, the writing is mediocre at best, and overall it never really found an audience. I mean, Marlene King has some die-hard fans that will watch anything she does and call it genius, so I guess these people were into it. But aside from that, the show went largely unnoticed, and the people that did watch slowly stopped watching. The ratings dropped, and towards the end of season 2, it was announced by the CW that Famous in Love would not be coming back for another season. I'm sorry, just talking about it, I'm bored again. Anyway, let's move on. Number 5. Life sentence. Okay, I'm kind of cheating with this one a little because it's not exactly a teen drama per se, given that the show is not centered around teenage characters, but I'm going to count it anyway because despite that fact, this is a show that took all of the tropes of generic teen dramas and was clearly aimed at a teenage audience, so I'll allow it. Life Sentence is a CW show that came out in 2018 and that stars Lucy Hale as a young woman named Stella Abbott who has been dying from cancer for 8 years. She's been living her life like every day is going to be her last, giving herself the chance to have a happy and eventful experience on this earth before she goes. Her family is incredibly supportive and her husband is by her side every step of the way. Things are good and she feels like she did things right. Except when the show begins, she finds out that her treatment unexpectedly worked and she is cured from cancer. Stella is not going to die. Now, obviously, everyone rejoices, everyone is happy, Stella gets to live, but then comes the aftermath, and that is what this show is about. Because yes, it's only after learning that she will live that everything around Stella starts to crumble. She begins to realize the weight and the scope of her decisions and the way she has been living her life carefree for the past 8 years. Not only for herself, but for the people around her. She married a man just a month after meeting him. She made a lot of very expensive decisions that cost her family a lot, and that family she thought was supportive and happy has actually been falling apart for years. But everybody has been carefully hiding it from her and putting a good front so she could go thinking everything was beautiful. She finds out her family is actually completely broke as a result of everything they had to pay for her cancer and the experiences she wanted to live before she died. They're so broke that they even have to sell their family home. Her parents, who she believed were in love, are actually on the brink of divorce. Her mom is having an affair with her best friend. Her sister had secretly declined an opportunity to study writing in her dream college years ago so she could stay home and help take care of Stella. Her brother got an older married woman pregnant. It's a whole mess. And not only that, but now she has to start living for herself. As in, she needs to get a job, which she never had to do before. But because of her cancer, she never got to graduate high school, so things get difficult very quickly. Stella starts having a lot of doubts about her life and a lot of regrets about her choices, and she tries to navigate that new reality with an entire life in front of her. The concept of Life Sentence is actually pretty good, all things considered. It could make for a truly heartfelt and human drama full of emotion and important topics. As somebody who lost a best friend to cancer the same year my mother lost her best friend of 40 years to cancer, this show sounded like something I would really be into due to its subject matter. And when that first teaser came out, I got kind of excited for it, especially because the show also stars Lucy Hale, who I adore. Unfortunately though, I forgot this was a CW show. So, what did Life Sentence end up being? Did you guess a poorly written story with bad characters and writers who set up a plot with beautiful and serious themes only to shove them aside for the sake of lame romantic subplots? Well, you guessed right. Here's your Kit Kat. Life Sentence is such a disappointing show compared to what it was promising to be. It's unbelievably boring. The unique family dynamic that is set up is only at the center of the show in the pilot. The rest of the season is mainly about which guy Stella wants to kiss between her husband she barely knows and that other guy she's had a crush on. Lucy Hale, despite giving a solid performance throughout the whole thing because she's good in everything she does, is stuck with a character that is so badly written she becomes utterly detestable. The writers want Stella to be this adorable, quirky millennial trying to figure out her life, but they write her in such a bad way that she instead comes across as selfish, two-faced, and incredibly insensitive. And unfortunately, this is the type of show where if your protagonist doesn't work, the show might as well be dead. And it was, because after 13 weeks of declining ratings, the CW canceled Life Sentence and it immediately fell into oblivion. Number 4. Skins. USA. Yeah, I know some of you just had a mini heart attack here, but no, I'm not crazy. I don't have a bone to pick with Skins. I loved Skins. But I do have a bone to pick with Skins US, the American remake that came out in 2011 on MTV. Just like its predecessor, this show focuses on the lives of a group of teenagers in high school as they navigate their reality and cope with a great deal of parties, alcohol, sex, drugs, and every other code of debauchery a 16-year-old can get its hands on. The original British series is iconic, we all know it, chances are we've all seen it, and because it was so iconic, Americans took a look at it and went, oh, we can do that. And no, they were wrong. They were wrong as fuck. It's kind of astonishing to see how Skins US completely failed at recapturing the raw and visceral storytelling of the original series that made it stand out so much. This show completely misses the mark. The original Skins had a very unapologetic nature, depicting teenagers in their most scandalous form with stories that were not afraid to throw some emotional and thematic gut punches at the audience. Skins US, however, is 100% held back by America's complete inability to let go of their old-fashioned conservative antics. Because of excessive censorship that sits with a large majority of networks in the country, Skins US kind of ends up coming across as Skins Light. The characters can't even swear, the storylines can't be nearly as dark or heavy in nature, sex is a big no-no, and as a result, you are left with a show that implies rather than shows. Meaning, because of America's censorship, Skins US was forced to get rid of everything that made Skins Skins. It takes away all of the elements that made this show fascinating to audiences. The original Skins didn't do implying. The reason why it was so unique and shocking and captivating at the time is that it was totally unafraid of being completely in your face with the themes it wanted to touch on. It was raw and brutal, and when you take away that crucial element, you essentially kill its identity. All of the edge that made Skins the phenomenon it was is nowhere to be found in this remake, and you find yourself watching a show that desperately tries to be something it can never be, by its very nature of being on American television. The closest Americans have ever gotten to replicate Skins is probably Euphoria, because Euphoria is able to depict debauchery without limitations, but even then, I don't think Euphoria comes even close to the genuine depiction of teenagehood that made the characters of Skins so attaching. And Skins US is so far away from it as well, it completely misses the point of the original show. If I remember correctly, Skins US was cancelled after one season, unsurprisingly due to a rapidly declining audience and a bunch of controversy, because despite the fact that this show heavily censored the content of the original series, some conservative organizations still went after the show to try and censor it further because they thought it was too scandalous. America. Fuck yeah! Number 3. The Lying Game. Hey, remember Twisted earlier? Remember when I talked about the era of Pretty Little Liars copycats? Remember when I said ABC Family desperately tried to recapture that magic? Yeah, well, Twisted wasn't their first attempt. In fact, there was another one that came before it. It was called The Lying Game. And again, if I had to make a list of bad shows that wasted great concepts, I think this show would be at the top of my list. I love the premise of The Lying Game. It's actually really good. If you don't know, The Lying Game tells the story of Emma Becker, a teenage foster child living a life of struggle and poverty in Arizona, who finds her life turned completely upside down when she is tracked down and found by her identical twin Sutton, a twin who she never knew existed. Sutton, who was adopted by a wealthy family, just learned about Emma's existence and decided to find her with a very specific goal in mind. She asks Emma to take her place back home for a few days and pretend to be her while she goes on a mission to uncover the truth behind the identity of their birth mother. Working hand in hand, the sisters quickly find out they are at the center of a strange and bloody conspiracy that could answer why they were separated at birth and why they were never told of each other's existence. The one very interesting particularity with The Lying Game being an attempt at getting another Pretty Little Liars off the ground is that this show is adapted from a book series that was written by Sarah Shepard, who is also the author of the Pretty Little Liars novels. The concept was pretty cool. Alexandra Chondo was very well cast in the main roles. She does an incredible job at playing the two twin sisters, and she actually manages to make Emma and Sutton feel like two very distinct people. Emma is innocent, kind, and generous. She's independent and hardened by a life of poverty and foster care. And Sutton is a selfish, rude, mean-spirited, spoiled brat that is more attuned to a Blair Waldorf who treats the people around her like disposable objects, but also proves to be incredibly intelligent and skilled. Unfortunately though, just like Twisted, The Lying Game is completely wasted by the writer's inability to follow through with the promise of their mystery. This show is all over the place. It's so messy, and again, it makes the fatal mistake of hooking the viewers with an awesome mystery, only to then shove it aside and make the entire show about lame romantic plot lines, headlined by a forced love triangle that takes up way too much of the runtime and ends up dragging the entire show down. You end up with a show that feels like what Pretty Little Liars turned into after its third season. A show that has for only business model to literally just waste the audience's time by stalling indefinitely. It uses the same cheap tricks, the same stupid gimmicks to try and keep you watching without advancing the plot one bit. It is the most copycat I can possibly think of. It is so painfully obvious that this show was meticulously made by the network with for only goal to replicate the formula of Pretty Little Liars to a T, without realizing that PLL itself was digging its own grave due to that very formula. And despite managing to build somewhat of a fan base, unlike Twisted, it wasn't nearly enough to meet ABC Family's very strict expectations after over a year on the air. And so The Lying Game was cancelled halfway through its second season, leaving viewers on a huge cliffhanger that was never resolved. It was very clear they had no idea where they were going with it, so people got bored and they did not stick around to watch. Not unlike the next one though, number 2, 90210. Yeah, I know this is gonna be my controversial pick of the list because I know this show has its fans and it's the show on this list that hands down has the most success, but I don't give a fuck. 90210 sucks ass and I'm not afraid to say it. 90210 came out on the CW in 2008. They notoriously fast-tracked the production of the show in an attempt to capitalize on the success of Gossip Girl, and it is a sequel/reboot of the beloved 90s classic Beverly Hills 90210. This incarnation follows a new group of teenagers attending West Beverly Hills High School, and we get to know them as they go through life and shenanigans and love stories and all that good jazz. Listen to me. Since I have been a teenager, I have tried so hard to get through this show, and I never managed to do it. It's boring. I tried to watch it like 5 times, and the more I try, the less I can hold on. The furthest I've ever gotten was the final episode of season 3, which immediately made me tap out when I saw they chose to end this season with the most overplayed twist in the genre, the pregnancy reveal. I've seen dozens of them. We all know it's the laziest twist that is almost always retconned, but I don't know why in this show specifically I found it so insufferable that it made me quit. This entire show is just a clusterfuck of overplayed cliches and tropes that feel like the plot is written by an algorithm. It is so devoid of anything genuine. It doesn't have a real identity. It is the most Hollywood produced show ever. A soulless show that is trying so hard to be Gossip Girl and One Tree Hill at the same time, and it doesn't work. I hate this show, man. It's so bad. I do like the cast a lot, but they just can't save the overall thing. This show is such a bore. It was famously canceled like 5 seasons in, despite the creators saying they wanted to do 6 seasons, but I guess after season 3, the ratings started to rapidly decline, so the CW was like, nope, wrap this up in 5 seasons. And you know what? It's better like that, because it was bad. Anyways, I don't want to talk about it anymore. This show sucks. I never liked it. I never will. I won't apologize for it. You can argue with the wall. Let's move on to number 1. The Secret Life of the American Teenager. Alright, here we are. This one is interesting because not only do I consider it to be the worst teen show ever made, it also finds itself in a lot of lists about the worst TV shows ever made, period. Not the worst teen dramas, the worst TV shows of all time. The Secret Life of the American Teenager is another ABC Family show that came out in 2008 and tells the story of Amy Juergens, a 15-year-old high school student played by Shailene Woodley who gets pregnant after having sex for the very first time. You essentially follow her journey into motherhood along with her parents, her friends, the guy that got her pregnant, and her new boyfriend who she started dating after getting pregnant. It's a big mishmash of relationship dynamics in the middle of a plot that addresses some touchy subjects, which could be interesting, by the way. Like, on the surface, The Secret Life of the American Teenager could be a powerful story, but this show, man, oh boy. I didn't remember much about the show, but I knew I watched it years ago, and I remembered quitting about halfway through season 2. I remembered hating the characters so fucking much. I remembered the writing being incredibly awkward and bizarre, and I ended up watching more of it recently for this video, and holy hell, it just gets so much worse. The acting is like really bad. The plot devolves into an overly convoluted mess where there ends up being several teen pregnancies and teen marriages and just a whole lot of conservative ideals being thrown at your face. Oh my god, it's so bad. I don't know how this show got to produce 121 episodes. Secret Life also stands out for being the show that made Shailene Woodley famous, which is ironic because she hated this show so much she almost quit acting because of it. If you don't know the story, Shailene Woodley was basically held hostage on this show. The show ended in 2013, but in an interview she gave a couple years ago, she admitted that she signed on for the show when she was very young and didn't fully understand what she was getting herself into. She was thrilled at the idea of telling an important story about teen pregnancy, but she quickly realized that her morals did not align with the show's ideals at all. She almost immediately became extremely uncomfortable with the show's preaching of abstinence and pro-life messages aimed at young teens, and the fact that most of it, if not all of it, was expressed through her character, Amy, was a very big moral dilemma for Shailene, and she grew to also despise her own character. She hated playing Amy, she hated working on the show, and she actually wanted to leave very early on, but she had signed a 7-year contract and ABC Family refused to let her go or to reduce her role. She was legally stuck on Secret Life and was essentially forced to keep playing this character and pushing those messages through her for 5 years. She was miserable the entire time. She even referred to it as the hardest thing she's ever done, but thankfully her suffering was cut short because Secret Life of the American Teenager was cancelled by ABC Family after 5 seasons in 2013, and Shailene was finally free, leaving behind her what I believe to be the worst teen drama ever made.